So you'll be up there on that stage, and you've qualified. You had, for example, in Las Vegas, in Nevada, you made it in the polls. At the same time, you got a lot of candidates. How are you going to differentiate yourself from those other people, the other 11 people on that stage?
Well, I mean, David, I'm very different from the other people on that stage. You know, I've been an outsider for the last 10 years in politics, putting together coalitions of ordinary American citizens to take on unchecked corporate power, and we've been winning. The other people on that stage are insiders, almost all of whom have been living in Washington for years or decades. And so if you think, which I think, the problem in the United States is a broken federal government, a government that's been purchased by corporations, that has completely ceased to work, then you have to ask yourself, who's the right person to fix that? Is it the outsider who's been doing that successfully for 10 years, or is it somebody from inside the Beltway?
There's an awful lot of talk about President Trump and his base, who the core Trump voter is. Who's the core Tom Steyer voter? Who's the person that's right in the center of who you're going for?
Well, I think what I'm proposing is breaking that corporate stranglehold, and which I think will give us a chance to do all the policies that Americans across the board want. 80% of Americans believe that this government has been purchased by corporations. I don't know if you knew that, David. 80%. So to me, the question is, that 80%, those are the people I'm talking to because they already know that this government is broken. They're just trying to figure out what to do about it. And my answer is, actually, here are some common sense solutions. We can get this government back so it's of, by, and for the people.
And that's what I want to talk about, because you have an Elizabeth Warren up there. You've got a Bernie Sanders who also say that corporations have way too much influence. They have plans for that. You must differentiate yourself on what you do about it, not on the indictment. So what would you do that's different from them?
Well, there's some things that I've proposed that they'll never do. I've proposed term limits for congresspeople and senators. I've proposed a national referendum, so that if the American people want something, we can put it on the ballot and pass it into law ourselves. It takes away the monopoly of the Congress over legislation. That's done in 26 states in the United States of America. I've talked about, and I think other people agree on this, that we need to end the legal fiction that corporations are people. Corporations aren't people, and they don't deserve the political rights of an American citizen. So we really do need to break this corporate stranglehold, and that's got to be the first job. That we've got to do this in order to get any of those health care plans. We've got to do it in terms of getting any of those education plans. And honestly, we aren't close to dealing with climate in the real world. So all of those proposed Green New Deals are really off the table as far as I can see.
So in order to get most of those things down, you're going to need more than just 51-49 in the country, because a lot is going to require constitutional amendments, changes to the fundamentals. How do you bring that much of the country together when the country appears to be so badly divided? It feels like there's 45 on one side, 45 on the other, and we're fighting for the 10 in the middle.
Well, actually, you know, it's funny, David, because I don't see it that way at all. I think that's the traditional way that people have thought about this. But what I see is that about half of Americans don't vote. And we've asked them, you know, an organization I started, Next Gen America, did the largest youth voter mobilization in 2018, last year, in American history. And we asked hundreds of thousands of young people why they don't vote, and they vote at half the rate of other American citizens. And they say, no one tells the truth. No one deals with our actual issues. There's no difference between the parties. Why would I participate in a failed system? That's the start of our conversation in terms of why they're so important. But so to me, 50% of Americans don't vote. Everybody's talking about the 2% who do vote but can't decide which way to vote. And I'm saying, oh no, 50% of Americans don't vote. They all agree with what I'm saying and with the Democrats. Why don't we go convince them that the system isn't broken, that if they participate, we can take back the government? And that's what I've been doing.
We're talking with presidential candidate Tom Steyer. Tom, when you talk about referendums, they're not in great repute right now, given what happened with Brexit. Do you think that was a good thing for the United Kingdom to have a referendum on whether to get out of the EU?
Look, I think that that was a terrible outcome. I think that it was hacked by the Russians. If I were in the UK right now, I would be pushing for another referendum, because I think it's become clear to everybody this is a mistake. I don't understand really what they're doing, but what I see is an ability in the United States to pass things that Congress won't pass. You know, over 90% of Americans have wanted mandatory background checks on every gun purchase for decades, and it's never happened, because the NRA is owned by the gun manufacturers, and they don't want it to happen. That's just an example, David.
Tom, you were an early proponent of impeachment proceedings against the President of the United States. Is there a danger of you succeeding too well in that? In this sense, will the next election be fought over impeachment and President Trump's wrongdoings, or will it be fought over some of the substantive issues that you're interested in?
I believe that the impeachment process will have run its course long before November of 2020. I started this 2 years ago, literally October of 2017, and more than 8 million Americans signed the petition I started. My belief in this is we have a cancer at the heart of our government. We have the most corrupt president in American history. The right thing to do is to hold him to account. 8 million Americans agree with me. I think the farther this goes, the clearer it is that this has always been a question of right and wrong. This has never been a question of political expediency. It has always been a question of standing up for doing what's right, for opposing real wrongdoing at the heart of our government, and actually protecting the American people and the Constitution. This has never been a political calculation.
Well, comment on that specifically in what's in the news right now, because the President of the United States says what he did with President Zelensky of Ukraine was actually go after corruption. He said that's what my problem was. It was corruption, perhaps involving Vice President Biden. It was not a political act at all. Does he have a point that, in fact, the President of the United States should be rooting out corruption?
No, that's a bald-faced lie. He was holding up congressionally approved aid to the Ukraine and refusing to give it to them until the president of the Ukraine did a personal political favor for Donald John Trump. That is an incredibly thin lie to cover up what was deeply corrupt, which everyone in his administration then went into frenzy about because they realized it was corrupt. And this is absolutely of a pattern of a president who started corrupt with cover-ups. It's been true. The Mueller report detailed his obstruction of justice. I didn't start this 2 years ago. Listen, I don't know if you know this, David. My dad prosecuted the Nazis at Nuremberg.
I did know that.
At the end of the Second World War. He was a naval officer.
It's quite a lineage.
And a lawyer. And he told me, when you see something really wrong, you're supposed to fight it every day before it metastasizes and gets stronger and takes over everything.